While 80,000 thoughts will bombard you today, just one conversation can make you 1% better. If you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to simply be yourself, you'll become more than yourself. Thanks for hanging with us today as we discuss what erodes and cultivates growth, making us 1% better. Welcome to 1% Better with Marc Lucas and Brandon Mouer.
Thank you so much for joining us, 1% Better. Second show, Brandon.
Second show.
As far as we know, we made the first show. We haven't destroyed anything or nobody sent us too many crazy, angry emails. And we're just glad to be back with you. The audience, ultimately, we care so much about really just connecting with you. We really want to hear from you. We really want to know, hey, what about this topic? Or would you consider having me on maybe even as a guest? We're open to all of that. Again, 1%bettershow.com is a great place to connect with us and to be able to dialogue with us. So in the second show, here we are. We really wanted to navigate a conversation around what are some of the big things that tend to really get in the way of you and I, the audience, us growing and getting 1% better. So one of those things that we talked about just this last week over the phone was that sometimes, and I'll use this example, my wife right now, she's had like 2 times in the last maybe 6 weeks, that little warning light on her dash start to go from yellow to red to more aggressive warning signs, and to the point where like, you know what, we got to get this looked at. One thing was her shocks. Her shocks got so bad, it was as if we were like riding around in like a Jeep that had no shocks. I mean, it was just awful. So anyway, so we said, you know what, we got to do something about this. And this show is really about, we've got to be honest with ourselves and have an awareness to say, you know what, are there some warning lights right now in your life, in our life? Like, what are those warning lights? What are the things that are really getting in the way of you getting 1% better, of you growing? And this show is just about the importance of having vulnerability, having awareness, and being able to have within this, we talked about it last show, this kind of circle of trust, this core group of friends, and your wife, in my opinion, your spouse should be in that, is kind of like the most important part of that. But really, these people need to be able to know where you're at. We have this expression in our home that we'll say often, because we all go through really, really tough times. We all do. And right now with actually somebody in our family, she's just not in a great spot right now, going through some tough stuff at school. So like we tell her, myself and my wife, it's okay to not be okay. But it's not okay to stay that way. You've got to tell somebody, hey, I'm right now struggling. I'm right now going through some things. And you've got to have some awareness in that. You've got to have some openness to be able to tell somebody else, hey, I'm not okay. You could say, I'm not okay because I feel like I'm getting angry a lot right now. Or I'm okay because I just feel really heavy right now in anxiety. Or I just am walking around with a lot of stress and I just can't sleep at night. Or I'm walking around right now and I feel like I'm always envious of other people. And social media, every time I get on social media, I'm just like constantly comparing to the Joneses and constantly wanting everything that they seem to be enjoying and having and celebrating. And so wherever it is, whatever that blank is, we've just got to really have some awareness. So some thoughts you have on that, Brandon?
Yeah, it's funny. I was in the car, as we all are. Maybe you're in the car right now listening to this. I was in the car recently and I put the Google Maps on and I had to get to my destination. And I wasn't in a rush this time around. I was able to drive accurately of the speed limit, and not that I speed a lot, no way, but I was able to go out at the decent speed, and I wasn't in a rush today or that day I was doing this. So put maps on, said 20 minutes, cool, down the street, right? So I usually am hard with self-control on the road. My wife would be the first to attest to that. I don't cuss people out. I don't flip them off, but I lose self-control. I get angry quickly. Maybe you do too. Maybe you're one of those people that make me angry. But we love you.
Maybe
anyway.
you're angry right now driving.
Maybe you're angry right now driving. Yeah, I feel you. But it's always my fault, right? So I was driving and I had the maps on 20 minutes. So I got on the freeway, the on-ramp, and usually I kind of get over to the other lanes. And this time I was like, I'm not in a hurry. I'll just kind of stay in the lane I merge right again in the lane I'm at and just kind of glide through the freeway, going straight for a while. And it's funny how I'm usually the guy who's passing people. Again, I'm not making myself sound like no, you get in the car with me, you'll be safe. I drive a lot. But people were passing me and they were going the speed limit, but I was kind of behind a slow semi and whatever. And my wife gets frustrated at me when she's always like, get away from these semis. I just kind of stay.
You have to.
Stay. Yeah, but it doesn't occur to me. I'm just like, why am I not going fast? And it's a semi. So I'm here 20 minutes. I'm listening to music and it's great. And I'm seeing these cars.
Well, you're behind the semi for 20 minutes?
No, well, I have 20 minutes to go. And
okay.
I get on the freeway. I'm in the semi.
I would lose my mind.
Right? Yeah, no,
that was the case.
I've learned to get around it.
Yeah.
But as I'm driving, my point is, as I'm driving, I'm seeing these cars go by me, and who cares where they're going, right? I don't know them. But the thought I had, and maybe you've experienced this, is I feel like I'm losing. Like I feel like I'm not winning this race in life right now on this road. And really, no one's racing. They don't even care about me on the road. They're just trying to get where they're going, and I'm trying to get where I'm going. But the thought of I'm driving, like it's like maybe they're not even speeding, but it's like I'm losing. I need to get over and not race them. I don't try to be wrecked, but it's just the idea of why is everyone going at a faster pace than me? Why am I? And I thought, whoa, that could apply to life. Can't like it could of like. Do you feel sometimes that you're losing in life because friends are getting things that you can't afford, or kids, if you have kids, or a spouse, they're getting promotions, or they're getting stuff going on at school if it's your kid, or your friends, or something you've been praying for if you pray, or things that you're hoping for, or hey, I should have gotten that and somebody else did. You could feel like you're losing. Which means, and I can interpret that for the show 1% better. You could feel like you're not growing in that area because everyone else seems around you to be having the best time of their life. And so I don't know if that makes sense, if that analogy applies of what I just said, trying to connect the two. But it was interesting. Clearly, I wasn't losing, right? Clearly, I wasn't losing.
Well, if you're behind a semi that long, maybe you're losing.
That's true. There's probably some other things wrong with me as well.
No, but I appreciate the illustration. Yeah. I think it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think in those moments, we always tend to kind of fall into a trap. Not always, but we tend to fall into a trap of, are we winning or losing based on the people that are around us?
Yeah.
And based on that freeway, you might have thought, you know what, I'm losing. I'm behind this semi too long, and I've got 20 minutes to go to my destination, but I'm losing right now. And I think I'm losing behind a semi because I always think that the rocks come up and hit my windshield. But it's like we feel like we're losing in those moments. And I love the illustration because I think it's a great question that we all need to ask ourselves. What is winning? Mm-hmm. And when you define that, the second question that I would suggest we ask is your definition of winning based on other people and how they're doing in the race?
So good. Yeah.
And that, I think, is a really big question that we have to wrestle with today, is at the end of the day, we're all on a different journey. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if we're all on the same freeway, to be honest.
That's a good point.
Some people could be on the freeway. Some people could be on the feeder road. Some people could be on the surface streets. Some people could just be pulling out of their garage.
Yeah.
So we're all in a different spot in the journey, and yet I'm bad at this as well, and that's why sometimes I really have to limit how much time I really just spend kind of like aimlessly on Instagram, because at the end of the day, if I just like have this like mindless 35 minutes on Instagram late at night, I'm like, okay, they're on vacation. Okay, their kid seems perfect. Okay, their kid has the scholarship. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, is everybody great and I suck? I'm like, what? Like, what? That? But we're seeing people's highlight reels. Like, we're seeing the best of the best of the shiniest of that person. And it's kind of really fake news. It's kind of a fake, I mean, not always, but a lot of times we want to present the shiniest part of our life with a filter and with the right bottom part in the story within the caption. So it's like we're all on different journeys. And yet I think for us, and this is really what you and I decided to do in the show, so I think identifying where you are in the journey and knowing that it's your journey. And I think the other thing that I would say is this, and I do this a lot in my marriage, but I think in our life, in all relationships, whether you're married or divorced or single right now, wherever you are in life in your relationships, your dating relationships, the reality is that holding up a magnifying glass and looking out at other people is really always bad. Like there's just not a lot of good things that are going to come from that. It's really, and we talked about it in the first show, and we'll talk about it probably a lot, it's holding up a mirror in front of ourselves. And I know that's what we want to do today. We really want to hold up a mirror and say, okay, here's some things that we've learned, and we're going to go right now to a passage that you love and a story that you love that comes from the Bible. And again, if you don't read the Bible, we're glad you're here. We're going to obviously reference the Bible, and we are Christians that strive every day to follow after Jesus, and we believe the words that come from the Bible, and we're going to use that in conversation as a really anchor of truth. But again, if you're in this journey where you're not believing it, stay with us. Stay with us. So maybe you just start with that story. I think it comes, there's a woman in John 4, right?
Yeah. A woman in John chapter 4 in the Bible, and she interacts with Jesus. But before Jesus gets to the woman, she's called the woman at the well because that's where Jesus found her. It's real quick. It's funny. I heard this John Chris, he's a comedian. He was funny. He was saying, what if God found you in a Denny's bathroom? Forever you would be known as the guy or the girl from the Denny's bathroom. And this is the woman at the well. It's like he was saying she's been at the store, she's been at her home. I'm not just at the well. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah. I only live at the well.
Just woman at the well. I've been at other things
On
too.
my home address, it says 123 Living Water at the well. Like that's her actual like home address. Yeah.
So Jesus found this woman at the well. That's the woman at the well of John chapter 4. But anyway, just context. So I have it pulled up here. That's why I'm looking at my laptop. But I don't have the whole book memorized like Pastor Mark here does. I was reading this, and it's very interesting. So very, very, very brief, quick overview of John chapter 4 of this woman at the well. She's unnamed. Woman at the well is what we have of her. And she goes to this well. So back in Bible times, just to give some context, people would go to the well in the morning when it was cool, or in the evening when it was cool. Nobody would go in the like noon when it's super hot, or like 11 or 2, right? It would be in the morning or evening. And it would be a great place to see relatives, to see friends, to have conversations. And so people sometimes like going to the well because they got to see people and talk with them, like wherever you go, work or whatever, you look forward to it. Yeah. This woman specifically went to the well at noon. The Bible says noon, high noon. It was hot.
Butt hot.
If you live in Arizona like we do, you understand.
Butt hot. Imagine summer, 122 degrees.
Yeah. So she specifically, intentionally goes to the well at noon. Mm-hmm. Why? Because back in those days, her type of personality was frowned upon big time. And her personality was somebody who interacted a lot sexually. Slept around, just a lot of scholars, smart Bible people, a lot of thinkers would all simultaneously is the word. Sometimes I have trouble with words.
That's a big word, though.
Yeah, agree that she lived pretty much a reckless, crazy life of kind of that Sin City life. And back in those days, that was it wasn't popularized like it is in 2023. So she was trying clearly to hide. So she came at noon because she didn't want to be seen by anybody. Nobody goes at noon. She was there at noon intentionally. Mm-hmm. So Jesus shows up because he's intentional about who he loves, and he loves everybody, and he's going after her for a reason. So he shows up and sees her, and I'm sure as a human being, she's thinking, great, I'm seen. Why? Does this guy, does he know me? What's he going to say to me? Probably embarrassment's coming, maybe shame. Doesn't know Jesus, doesn't even know who he is, just this guy. Maybe she was attracted to him because she had that lifestyle. So maybe she's thinking, maybe I can entice. I don't know what she's thinking, but she's a human being. So she's thinking something. And Jesus just sits there and starts a conversation with her, doesn't judge her, doesn't condemn her, doesn't look down upon her, doesn't question what she's doing with her life, just has a conversation. And she opens up. Jesus gets her by asking loving questions. You can read it in John chapter 4 in the Bible and ask her questions. And I say all that to give context, but here's the point I want to make of John chapter 4. Jesus spends a moment with her, and she, after having a conversation with Jesus, runs into the city where she's trying to hide from, runs into the city and exposes herself and says, "Come meet a man who told me everything I ever did." And it's funny because if you go read John chapter 4, what we have recorded is Jesus didn't tell her everything about her. They talked a little bit about who she's living with, and she exposed herself by saying, yeah, I don't have the guy I'm living with, isn't my husband. Like Jesus found that out, right? But that's it. The conversation wasn't everything about her, but the love, the acceptance, the exposure that God presented to her by being the loving God he is, made her feel seen, made her feel heard, made her feel guiltless and shameless of who she was in her core being. And she runs in the town, tells everybody, "Come see a man I told me everything I ever did." And they all follow her. And if you keep reading, the Bible says that people believe, trust that Jesus is who he says he is, the Messiah, the Savior of the world. Of one conversation, one interact with Jesus, who we believe to be the Son of God. So I'm not saying go meet Jesus and he's gonna, no, if you want to meet Jesus, let's do it. If you don't, again, stay with us because there's growth here in this story of John chapter 4. And as you can see, I'm very passionate about this woman at the well. Don't even know her name, but Jesus just has a conversation and he speaks out of observation, not condemnation. And she grew just by a conversation, an interaction with Jesus. And that's how we've grown in
That's
Jesus.
so beautiful. And you know what I think? There's so much that I love about this story, and I'm so glad that we are diving into this story right now. Here's something that I didn't even share. I was going to share this with you that I was going to share it now, but I'll share it now. I had a conversation just about 2 weeks ago, somebody who's been to that exact location.
No
it's
way.
in Samaria.
Wow.
And she brought... Shout out to Lisa. More shout outs. We're doing a lot of shout outs. Shout out to Lisa. Lisa brought a group of women there on a mission trip. And they're standing at the well and they read this passage where Jesus has this conversation with the woman. And somebody said, there's nowhere in the passage where we clearly know that she was a prostitute. We've gone to that place and we kind of lean into that. But what if, because back in the first century, if you were unable to have children for whatever reason medically, men would discard you. They would go through you because a part of really establishing yourself in that city wherever you lived was your lineage and the ability to procreate and have children. So if she might have not told the men this, they might have said, "We're done with you." And then she went through another man. He found this out. She couldn't procreate and have children. Again, "We're done with you." So I'm just throwing it out there because it's the same point. And here's the beautiful point. There's a lot that we can take away from this, okay? Jesus sees her, whatever it is, whether she's a woman that's maybe hemorrhaging and is unable to conceive, or she's a woman that truly has the inability to really have a sustainable marriage where she is monogamous and faithful. Whatever it is, okay? That's between her and Jesus in that moment. But Jesus says, "I see you." And then because he says that, "I see you," there's this beautiful understanding that there's no judgment there. He just says, "I see you, and I want you to know that I love you." Mm-hmm. So much so that she is so moved by this, like you said, that she comes back and brings the entire town back to come and see Jesus. And really, I think for all of us, no matter where you are on your faith journey, for all of us right now, we have to know this, is that Jesus says, just come come and be with me. I'm not going to label you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put you into some type of box.
Yeah.
Obviously, she had a scarlet letter on her back or on her chest that said, you have to come in the hottest part of the day to draw water. She was excommunicated and pushed away by the town. That's why she had to go to the well at the hottest part of the day. Jesus doesn't do that. He doesn't label us. He doesn't judge us. He says, just come and be with me, and I will love you. Obviously, he wants us to experience a relationship with him. And in that relationship, there's a change from the inside out. So we stop doing over a process of our whole life, less and less of the messy things that we do that the Bible would say is sin and mistakes that we make that separate us from God. But God just wants to be with you. He wants us just to come and see him and walk with him and follow him and be in relationship with him. So I think in the time that we have left, just share some practical things for you, maybe coming out of the story of John 4, but just practical things for you that really says, I need to have for growth, inside out growth, I need to have an awareness. I need to have vulnerability. I need to really walk this out to make sure that I'm growing.
Yeah. It's going to go back to the first show. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. The very first show we did, we talked about, I think you did at the beginning of this show too, the 5 circle of friends. And I think let's start there. Fine, forget 5. If you have 3, if you have 2, whatever, your core circle of people, come out of hiding. Come out of hiding. Whether you're hiding from what the Bible calls sin, whether you're hiding from a mistake you've made, whether you're hiding from somebody you hurt, whatever it might be, the first thing is exposing to yourself, taking responsibility just within yourself of what you want to grow in and what you need work in. Like we all need, we don't just say I want to get better. Go get better, fight, get better. And how do you do that? Let's start with the core people in your life and say, hey, can you help me in this area XYZ? And whether that's calling me once a day or once a week and saying, hey, how you doing with this? How can I help you with this? So I think, yeah, starting there, come out of hiding, because like the woman at the well in John chapter 4, she immediately came out of hiding by having a conversation. And this time, Jesus wasn't one of her core. He's the Son of God. But that story can parallel to a story in your life of exposing yourself in a loving, non-judging situation, scenario, atmosphere, and maybe you can start to progressively see growth in your life just by exposing, maybe not everything, but a few things, one thing. Pick one thing, maybe just start there. Well, this isn't a whole thing of like, if you don't get better by June 1st, XYZ is going to happen to you. No, who says? No, that's not how God works. That's not how creation has been set up. But one thing every day, let's just get better. And if it takes you a year to get better in that, if it takes you 5 years to get better in that, there's so many things that I'm 25 years old. There's so many things I'm still getting better in the same stuff. So yeah, don't be discouraged, be encouraged. It's like a bumper sticker.
That's really, really solid. And I think it's really good that you just shared all that you shared, but really don't feel like this is a sprint. This is a marathon. And just identify what's the one thing that I can really share with that kind of inside circle of friends that I trust and say, hey, can you help me get better in this one area? I know as I hold up that mirror in front of myself, I know that I need growth and I want growth. I desire growth. And this is one thing right now that truly I want to grow in. Do you have some advice? Do you have some feedback? I want to grow in this. And hey, I want you to ask me during our phone calls, during the time that we hang out and we get lunch or we go do whatever we do. I want you to ask me about this. And that is a beautiful, one of many first steps, but a beautiful, I think, first step that we can take together because we're taking this journey with you guys to be able to know that it's a beautiful journey, this marathon race. We got to fight for the things that we know are right and true and good. Like we got to fight for those things because at the end of the day, like I'll just end by saying, when we think about social media or when I think about social media, again, I could exhaust myself trying to compare myself to other people And like, I just want to have what they have. I want to get better and find what they have for happiness or they have for contentment. Find your thing that produces growth. Find your thing that you want to get better in, and know that we're in this journey together. Take one step today, and then another step tomorrow, and then another step the next day, and see the beautiful growth that happens when we have some consistent steps together. Thank you again for tuning in to 1% Better Show. Thanks for hanging with us. We'll talk to you real soon. Take care.
You're playing with my 1%.